Hey everyone, and welcome. We're about to jump into an ancient story that really gets to the heart of a question I think we've all asked ourselves at some point. A question about a kind of pain that leaves no mark, but somehow hurts way more than any physical wound.
You know what I mean? Right? Why is it that a sharp insult can cut so much deeper and just linger for so much longer than a scrape or a bruise? One ancient text actually says that the pain of being pierced by arrows isn't as bad as the agony from cruel words. The answer to this whole puzzle, it turns out, is hidden in this incredible story about a man who lost absolutely everything, and in doing so, found the ultimate secret to peace. So, our story kicks off in a place called Avantī, and it's about this really wealthy Brahmana. Now, this guy was a successful businessman. On the outside, it looked like he had it all. But, as we're about to see, his reality was anything but rich.
Yeah, the source material paints this really stark picture of him. Despite all his money, his character was, well, not great. He was incredibly cheap, driven by lust and greed, and had a super short fuse. He had a massive fortune, but his spirit was completely broke. And his miserly nature was like a poison. It didn't just stay in his bank account, it seeped into every single one of his relationships. He wouldn't even offer a kind word to his own family or to guests. And the result? Totally predictable. His own wife, his kids, even his servants, they all started to resent him. His home might have been full of stuff, but it was totally empty of any warmth or love.
So here we have this guy who's hoarded all this wealth and pushed away everyone who should have been close to him. You can probably see where this is going. The stage is perfectly set for a total collapse as his carefully built world just starts to fall apart at the seams.
And his downfall was just systematic. It came from every direction. The very relatives he mistreated, they took some of his money. Thieves snatched another chunk. And then everything else was just stripped away by fate, by the simple passage of time, and even by the government. Everything he had so carefully, so obsessively hoarded, poof, it was gone. And just like that, he hits absolute rock bottom. No money, no sense of purpose, no joy left in his life. He's completely and utterly alone. The family he'd ignored for years now ignored him right back. He was just lost in what the text calls unbearable anxiety.
But it's right here, in this moment of total, crushing despair, that the story takes its most important turn. This is that pivot point where immense suffering starts to transform into some truly profound wisdom. For the very first time, he sees his life with this shocking clarity. He looks back at all those years he spent just tormenting himself, chasing after money that brought him zero spiritual fulfillment, and not even any real happiness. It was all for nothing. And in that moment of realization, this powerful sense of detachment just started to wash over him.
But his insight went even deeper. He started to see that wealth itself was the root cause of 15 huge problems that plagued people. You know, things like stealing, violence, lying, anger, pride, distrust. He suddenly realized his pursuit of money was actually a pursuit of all these terrible things.
He finally understood something absolutely critical. This human life, he realized, is this incredibly rare and precious opportunity. It's the gateway to heaven and even total liberation. So why on earth would anyone waste it clinging to money, which he now saw was the source of all his misery? So with this totally new perspective, he made a decision. He untied what the text beautifully calls the knots of his heart. You know, all those anxieties and attachments, and he just transformed. The miser was gone. And in his place was a peaceful, wandering sage, with his mind and his senses in his own complete control.
But of course, the story isn't over yet. I mean, finding inner peace is one thing, but holding on to it when the world is being cruel to you, that's a whole different ballgame. His new life was about to bring the ultimate test of his transformation.
As he wandered, some truly wicked people subjected him to just unimaginable abuse. They stole his few belongings. They spat on him, they urinated on his head, they beat him up, tied him with ropes, and just relentlessly mocked him, saying he was a total fraud who only turned to religion because he went broke.
And yet, through all of this, he was unshakable. The text says he was as firm as a mountain. He didn't react, he didn't stumble, he just remained completely steadfast in his spiritual goal. Which brings us right back to the central mystery of this whole story. How? I mean, how is it possible for anyone to endure that kind of humiliation and pain and stay completely, totally peaceful? What was his secret? Well, the secret? It's in a song. While these men were tormenting him, the sage actually sang a song that explained his entire state of mind. And it's a song that reveals the ultimate key to conquering all of our suffering. So in this song, the sage asks this really radical question. What is the real cause of my pain? Is it these people hurting me? Nope. Is it the gods, the planets, my past karma, time itself? He goes through the whole list and rejects every single one. The one single ultimate cause of all our happiness and all our distress, he says, is the mind. Now, what does he mean by the mind? He's not just talking about our thoughts. He's describing this incredibly powerful engine that literally creates our entire experience of reality. He says it generates these fundamental forces: goodness, passion, and ignorance. And those forces create our actions. And our actions, well, they create our entire life. And this is where it all comes together. According to the sage, every single spiritual or religious practice you can think of, charity, doing your duty, self-discipline, taking vows, all of it, it all points to one ultimate purpose. It's all designed to get you to one place: complete control of your mind. Because if the mind is the only thing causing you to suffer, then mastering your mind is the only way to find true, lasting, unshakable peace. Think about it. The sage didn't change the world around him. He couldn't stop those cruel men. Instead, he mastered his inner world, and by doing that, he became immune to the outer one. So the question this amazing story leaves for us is simple, but it's really powerful. What is one thought, one reaction that you can choose to master today?
Think about this for a moment, that feeling when someone says something truly cruel to you, something calculated to wound. What's that immediate reaction?
That physical clench in your chest, maybe.
Yeah.
Or just that hot flash of anger or defensiveness.
Exactly. It's an emotional wound, isn't it? And it often lasts much longer than, say, a physical cut.
Right. And that's precisely where our sources start today. This ancient dialogue kicks off with this very idea.
It says something pretty extraordinary, actually. That verbal insults, the really harsh words from, wicked people, they can hit harder, cause more pain than actual physical wounds.
Even wounds that strike vital points. The text uses the term marmagaibays, like an arrow hitting a critical spot.
An arrow to a vital point. And words can hurt more. That comparison really stops you in your tracks. It tells you just how powerful words are, how deeply they can penetrate our sense of self.
Absolutely. And this observation, it really sets the stage for our whole deep dive today.
Yeah.
It comes from a conversation between the text calls him Lord Mukunda, chief of the Sherhas, and his disciple, Uddhava. Uddhava is described as the foremost devotee, sometimes called a disciple of Bahaspati. He basically asks Canto for the secret to real spiritual balance.
And Kansa's response?
Well, Canto says, look, the person who can stay steady, who isn't thrown off course by abuse from nasty people, that's the person who's truly self-controlled, truly saintly.
Right. Easy to say, hard to do.
Very hard. And to illustrate this kind of supreme self-mastery, Canto says he's going to share a story, what he calls a mahapunyam itihasam.
Which means?
A most pious and highly instructive history. A story with a deep lesson.
Okay, so we're getting a story within a dialogue. And this story contains?
It contains this incredibly powerful philosophical song, a Gita, from a mendicant, a wandering ascetic. And the paradox is he achieved this profound freedom because he was subjected to constant, intense abuse, both verbal and physical.
Wow. So our mission today is really to unpack this story, the Bhikho Gita, it's often called.
Exactly, and to really get to the heart of its radical insight, that suffering, well, it's never truly external.
The source is always internal, within the mind.
That's the core message. And the path to detachment, to freedom, is all about mastering that internal landscape, not trying to control the external world.
Okay, let's dive in then. Where does this story begin? You said it's about a mendicant, but it doesn't start there, does it?
No, quite the opposite. We start with a figure who is deeply, profoundly flawed. The Avantī Brāhmaṇa.
Avantī, that's the region, right?
Yes, the land of Avantī.
Yeah.
And we meet this Brahman, this Vijja, and he's just full of contradictions. On the one hand, through trade vartaviti, he became ashyatama shriya.
Meaning extremely rich, like loaded.
Extremely rich, immense wealth, had everything you could possibly want from a material standpoint.
Yeah, there's always a but.
A huge but. He was living a life of, well, total spiritual and emotional poverty. The text doesn't mince words. It gives this pretty bleak list of his character flaws.
Let's hear it.
Okay, so he was Kadarya, extremely miserly, a real cheapskate, kami, lustful, lubtai, intensely greedy, never satisfied, and adhikapata,
Which sounds like anger issues.
big time, excessively irritable, prone to just uncontrollable rage, a really destructive mix of vices.
So his miserliness, it wasn't just about, like, saving pennies.
No, it infected everything, especially his relationships. There's this powerful detail. He was so tight-fisted he wouldn't even offer relatives or guests bama trepi.
Not even kind words, seriously. Forget a meal, he couldn't even manage a polite hello?
Apparently not. Basic hospitality was out, but so was just basic human decency.
Wow. And this affected his home life, I assume?
Completely. His home is described as shinyavasata, basically deserted. He'd driven everyone away.
His family.
Everyone. And here's the kicker. He neglected himself, too. He didn't even allow himself basic comforts or pleasures, kamer anarchiata.
So he's hoarding all this wealth, but for what? He's not spending it on others, not even on himself. He sounds miserable.
Exactly. The wealthiest man in Avantī, probably also the loneliest and most miserable.
Yeah.
He denied happiness to absolutely everyone, including himself.
So this kind of extreme selfishness, this dushalasya kadaryasya, as the text puts it, it must have had consequences even before the money problem started.
Oh, absolutely. Huge social fallout. His entire circle, sons, wife, daughters, servants, relatives, they became vyin,
Deeply unhappy.
deeply unhappy, and they just stopped doing anything nice for him. Why bother? He gave nothing back. So he was totally isolated, despised by his own family, long before he lost his fortune. The wealth bought him zero affection or respect.
Right. So the stage is perfectly set for a total collapse. He wasn't following his religious duties, dharma, wasn't enjoying life, karma. The text says he was already falling from both worlds, upaya lokata.
Precisely. He was hoarding his wealth like a yaka, those mythical beings who guard treasure obsessively, making sure nobody, not even themselves, can benefit from it.
And that kind of hoarding, it never ends well, does it?
Almost never. And sure enough, the wealth he'd gathered through bhauya saparishama, great labor and toil, it just started to vanish, as if the universe itself was correcting the imbalance.
How did it happen? Was it one big event?
No. The source details it meticulously. It shows all the different ways hoarded wealth can just slip away. It was like a four-pronged attack.
Okay, prong one.
First, his own relatives, Yataya, started taking bits, maybe feeling entitled after years of being ignored.
Makes sense. Prong two.
Professional thieves, dasyavo. They looted him.
Ah, classic. Three.
Fate in time, daivata, kalato. Things like accidents, maybe natural disasters, maybe just bad investments or depreciation. Stuff happens.
Great. And the fourth.
The government, basically. The king, napartivat. Taxes, fines, demands. The state always gets its share.
So bit by bit, or maybe all at once, it just disappeared. His whole life dismantled.
Completely. No religious merit, no pleasure, no wealth. And worst of all, upakenta kasvajanai, scorned and neglected by his own family.
Ouch. That's got to hurt more than losing the money.
Absolutely. And this total collapse triggered a massive internal crisis. Unbearable anxiety, the text calls it durajayam sintham apa.
It wasn't just, oh no, I'm broke. It was deeper.
Much deeper. It was the crushing realization that he'd wasted his entire life obsessing over something temporary and ultimately destructive.
But this rock bottom moment, this is actually where the shift happens.
Yes. This profound suffering, this existential crisis, it becomes the catalyst for his nirvana.
His detachment, his awakening.
Exactly. A deep sense of detachment from the material world he'd clung to so tightly. He starts lamenting, realizing all his work was useless. It didn't bring him religious merit. It didn't bring him pleasure.
Only self-torment.
Only Amaupataya, self-torment in this life, and paving the way to hell, Narakayaka, in the next.
So this is where the philosophy starts to emerge, born directly out of his own pain.
Right. He realizes that wealth gathered by misers like him never actually brings happiness. It's fundamentally flawed.
And he starts analyzing greed itself.
Yes, the corrupting nature of labha, greed.
Yeah.
And he uses this really powerful, kind of shocking analogy.
What is it?
The text says that even a slight amount of greed destroys pure fame and virtue. Yashu, yashizvana shuta, just like Shivatra destroys desired beauty.
Shusra. What's that?
White leprosy.
Leprosy. Wow. Okay, let's pause there. Leprosy. It physically disfigures you, makes you an outcast. He's saying even a little greed does that to your soul.
That's the implication. That subtle greed, which might seem harmless, maybe even smart business sense to some,
Yeah.
it psychologically and socially disfigures you. It makes your inner self repulsive, ruins your reputation, damages your virtue in a way that's almost visible.
So the disease isn't just internal, it projects outwards, isolates you.
Absolutely. And this constant focus on wealth makes peace impossible, even if you manage to hold on to it. The sources list these stages of dealing with wealth acquisition: success, increase, protection, loss, expenditure.
And every single stage is filled with suffering.
Toil, fear, anxiety, delusion. From the moment you try to get it to the moment you lose it or spend it, it's just a constant source of stress.
It really does sound like a self-imposed anxiety loop. Just endless worry.
It is. And that anxiety fuels what the text calls the Panyakadashanartha,
The 15 misfortunes.
the 15 misfortunes rooted in wealth, Arthamula. And the list includes things like stealing, violence, lying, hypocrisy, lust, anger, pride, intoxication, division, enmity, distrust, rivalry.
Okay, so it's not just a list of personal sins. It's like a diagnosis of social breakdown. The pursuit of wealth breeds the very things that tear people and communities apart.
Exactly. And if you, the listener, think about any major conflict, personal or social, chances are you'll find one of these 15 things stemming from that material focus right at the core.
The text really hammers this home with a detail about relationships, doesn't it?
It does. It's devastating. It says that even Ekasanita people who are really affectionately united, like brothers, wives, parents, close friends,
Yeah.
they instantly become enemies, savarehakha, over a kakina.
Which is?
A tiny coin. A really small amount of money. That little bit is enough to provoke instant rage, sarabdha, and turn loved ones against each other.
That is chilling. It just confirms his realization, doesn't it? The misery wasn't just losing the money. It was seeing that the money itself had been poisoning everything all along.
Yes. The external collapse forced him to see the internal root cause, his own obsession, not the people or circumstances that took the money away.
So this realization, this nirvana, it's the turning point. He sees his mistake and he decides to make a radical change.
A completely radical change. He recognizes the immense value of just being born human. He calls it amara pratyam, something even the gods wish for.
Why? Why is human birth so special?
Because it's the svargapavargayurdvaram, the gateway
The gateway, too.
to both heaven and liberation. It's the unique opportunity to achieve the highest goals. So clinging to wealth, which he now sees as the abode of misfortune, would just be the ultimate stupidity.
So he decides to use whatever time he has left, wisely.
Urgently and wisely, he resolves to use the remaining span of his life, kalabashin, to pursue the ultimate spiritual goal, akhilasvarchi. He decides to adopt Padmaniyam.
Which means total devotion to the Supreme Self.
Exactly. He decides to untie the Hodiyagrantham, the knots in his heart, those deep psychological attachments and complexes.
And just become a monk.
Immediately. He becomes a Bhikkhu Abhunmunya, a peaceful sage mendicant. No halfway measures.
He mentions an example, right? King Kabog.
Yes. He cites King Kavega, who apparently realized he only had a single moment, a muhurta, left to live, and in that moment achieved the highest spiritual realm, Brahmaloka.
So the Brahmana, now old and poor, feels that same urgency. Use every remaining second.
Exhaust his body in vigilant pursuit of that supreme goal. And Case confirms, yes, he really did it. He renounced everything pravraja, controlled his mind, senses, breath,
He
sayatadmandayanilat,
started wandering.
wandering the earth for alms, completely detached, trying to go unnoticed, alecta. He solved the internal problem, his obsession with wealth. But now comes the external test.
Oh. The world doesn't just leave you alone when you find inner peace, does it?
Rarely. This is where the tradition really tests you. Spiritual practice isn't just about quiet meditation. It's about how you handle real-world friction, real cruelty.
And he encounters cruelty.
Big time. The Asajanya, the wicked people of Avantī, maybe the same people who knew him back when he was the rich miser. They see this old, renounced beggar, Pravaya become, and they just lay into him.
How? What did they do?
The list of abuses is specifically designed to break him psychologically. It starts with petty stuff, stealing his few belongings.
Like his begging bowl and staff?
Exactly. His staff, poultry, his rosary akasutram, even his patched-up robes. Kanti, basically everything he owned, his whole identity as a mendicant.
Okay, that's mean, but it gets worse.
Much worse. It escalates quickly to calculated humiliation. They'd harass him while he was just trying to eat the food he'd begged, Bhagavatam down by the riverbank, mocking him maybe for needing charity now.
Horrible. And physical abuse, too.
Yes, and the text is shockingly graphic. The Popio, it calls them the most sinful people, would literally urinate and spit on his head. Murdani. Right on his head.
Oh my God, that's beyond cruel.
And they'd try to force him to speak. He'd taken a vow of silence, presumably, Yadavaka, so when he wouldn't speak.
They beat him.
Dachanti, they beat him. This isn't just random abuse. It's targeting his practice, his dignity, his very being.
And the verbal abuse, was it just random insults?
No, it was even more targeted,
Yeah.
using his past against him. They didn't just call him generic names. They called him a thief, stinoyam,
A thief? Why?
maybe projecting, or just pure malice. And they called him a hypocrite, a phony,
Attacking his sincerity, that cuts deep.
Exactly. Their main accusation was, you're not really detached. You only became a beggar because you lost all your money, and your family kicked you out.
So reducing his entire spiritual transformation to sour grapes. He's just a failed businessman pretending to be holy.
Precisely. They completely dismissed his interchange. They even tied him up and confined him, treated him like a toy, a kranakakam, just to mock him publicly.
It's like ancient public shaming. They're trying to destroy his reputation, invalidate his whole journey. How on earth did he handle this? This constant systemic abuse from the Naradhamaya, the lowest of men.
And this is the absolute core of the lesson. He remained akampita,
Unshaken.
completely unshaken, steadfast in his duty, svadharmasva. Why? Because he'd already reached this profound understanding internally.
What understanding?
He recognized that all this suffering, whether it felt physical, bhatika, or God-sent, or just bodily, it was all simply atmanotyam.
The destined result of his own past actions. Karma.
Exactly. He wasn't blaming the people spitting on him. He saw them merely as instruments delivering the results of his own past deeds.
So instead of reacting with anger or despair, he just accepted it as a kind of purification.
Yes. Accepted it with sattvikam vitim, pure-hearted patience and fortitude. By doing that, he was essentially neutralizing his old karma without creating new negative reactions.
And that calm acceptance is what allowed him to sing this philosophical song, this Gita.
Precisely. It wasn't a song of complaint or anger. It was a song of deep realization. He understood the world wasn't really attacking him. His own past was simply playing out on the body he happened to be inhabiting.
Okay, so let's get into the Gita itself. How does it start? What's the opening statement?
It starts with this philosophical bombshell, really. The Brahmaniya flatly denies that happiness or distress comes from anywhere outside himself.
He lists specific things he's not blaming.
Yes, 6 common culprits, he says. Look, it's not other people, it's not the gods, it's not the soul itself, it's not the planets, it's not my past actions, karma, and it's not even time, kalo. None of these are the real cause of my suffering.
Whoa. That basically eliminates everything people usually blame.
Yeah.
Fate, society, God, astrology, past lives. If none of those are the cause, what possibly is?
He declares, Manapara Karancha Mamanti.
The mind is the supreme cause.
The mind is the supreme cause. The mind alone is what sets the entire Sazarakakraya, the wheel of material existence, spinning. It's the architect of our entire experienced reality.
Okay, that puts all the responsibility squarely back inside. But how? What's the mechanism? How does this one thing, the mind, create all this suffering and rebirth?
He explains that the mind, which is very powerful, Baliya, works by creating or manifesting the 3 guchas, the modes of nature.
Purity, passion, and ignorance. Sattva, rajas, tamas.
Exactly. White Shuklani, red Lohitani, and black, he calls them. From these modes arise different kinds of actions, Pilakani Karmanti, and from those actions driven by the modes.
Come different kinds of births, Satayo Bhavanti, that match those modes. Is that it?
That's the cycle. The mind flips the switches on the modes drive the actions lead to future birth dominated by those same modes. It's a feedback loop powered by the mind.
So where does the actual soul, the Atma, fit in, the eternal conscious part of us? Is it driving this?
No. The soul is described as anaha, inactive, desireless. It's inherently pure and effulgent, shining hiranmaya matsaka, like a golden friend of God, the text says. It simply watches. Udigat. It looks on.
Just an observer, a witness.
Purely a witness. It's the mind, identifying with the subtle body, svalligam, and chasing after material desires, kabanjuan, that gets tangled up with the modes and thinks it's bound. The soul itself is always free. The mind creates the illusion of bondage by identifying with the material coverings.
Okay, that's a crucial distinction. Now let's really dig into his arguments against those 6 external causes. This feels like the philosophical heart of the Gita where he justifies his patience. Let's take them one by one. First, people. Why not blame the horrible people who abused him?
He uses this brilliant analogy of self-injury. He asks, if your tongue accidentally bites itself with your teeth, who do you get angry at?
Good question. Yourself. Neither. Both.
Right. Since both tongue and teeth are part of the same body, Bhamayo's tat, blaming one or the other is kind of meaningless. The duality of me versus them breaks down. So if another person causes you pain, philosophically, it's just one part of the universal body interacting with another part. Getting angry at the aggressor misses the point because ultimately they aren't truly separate from you in the grand scheme of existence.
That's a very non-dual perspective on social interaction. Okay, second cause. Gods or demigods. Why can't we blame divine forces for our troubles?
Same logic, scaled up. He uses the body analogy again. If one of your limbs bumps another, say, your elbow hits your knee, you don't get angry at your own body parts, Swadahe, do you?
No, you just think, oops, clumsy.
Exactly. So the gods, other people, planets, they're all just interconnected parts of the larger cosmic body, the Virat Rupa. Blaming a god for your suffering is like getting mad at your own hand for bumping your elbow. It fails to see the unity of the whole system.
Interesting. Okay, number 3. The self, Atman itself. Some philosophies might say the self is the ultimate source. Why does he reject that as the cause of suffering?
This pushes into really deep monismus. He says, okay, if the self were the source of joy and sorrow, then joy and sorrow would just be its inherent nature, nijasvabha.
Like heat is the nature of fire.
Exactly. But if the self is, by definition, the only thing that truly exists, if reality is non-dual, then any appearance of duality within it, like joy versus sorrow, must be false, musalset. It's an illusion.
So if only the self exists, there's no real other to cause suffering and no real division within the self to generate it either. The whole concept collapses.
Precisely. Suffering only makes sense if you believe in fundamental separation, which, from this perspective, is the core illusion.
Okay, moving outwards again. Planets, Grahotha. Astrology is huge for many people. Why dismiss planetary influence?
He's quite direct, he asks. What concern does the unborn soul, Ajasya Janasya, really have with these planets moving around? He points out that even the planets are said to afflict each other. They're part of the changing, suffering material world themselves.
So if they aren't eternal, unchanging, conscious causes, they can't be the ultimate source of the soul's experience. Don't look to temporary celestial patterns for eternal answers.
Pretty much. Now, the really big one, past deeds, karma. This seems like the most counterintuitive rejection. Isn't karma the whole point in many traditions?
Yeah, how does he argue against karma being the root cause of suffering?
This is subtle but crucial. He distinguishes the mechanism from the consciousness experiencing it. He says actions, karma, are asat.
Inert, unconscious.
Yes, and the body performing them is also inert. The conscious self, the puroyam, is just the observer, the witness, like that divine bird, Suparya, just watching. Since the pure self isn't the doer, remember, the mind is the agent activating the inert body via the modes.
Okay, so the self isn't fundamentally touched by the results of these unconscious actions.
Right. The suffering associated with karma only sticks to the consciousness that identifies with the mind and body, the one who thinks, I am the doer. The pure witnessing self remains untouched, just aware.
I see. So we only experience karmic suffering because we mistakenly graft it onto our sense of I and mine. The mind acts as the bridge, allowing the effects of inert actions to seem like they're happening to the conscious self.
You've got it. That clarifies the philosophical leap. Blame the mind's identification, not the inert mechanism of karma itself.
Okay, final one. Time. Kala. Why isn't time the ultimate cause of the ups and downs?
He argues that if time causes suffering, well, time itself is neutral. Tadamakosawa. It's just its nature. Using that beautiful analogy, heat naturally belongs to fire. Cold naturally belongs to snow. They aren't caused by some external force. They're the nature of the thing.
So dualities like joy, sorrow, honor, insult, they're just inherent features of existence unfolding within time, not caused by time as an independent agent.
Exactly. Time is just the medium, the backdrop. Therefore, the Supreme Being, Parasya, is never affected by these dualities, Tidanvan. They belong to the realm of change. not the unchanging reality.
So the ultimate conclusion, weaving all these refutations together, is that nothing and no one outside is truly responsible for the suffering we experience. Not people, gods, fate, karma, time. Nothing.
Nothing external. The entire structure of the material world, the sasarakakram, with all its pains and pleasures, insults and honors, it's all rooted in that one single error. False identification.
The false sense of I and mine, yathahamar. That's what creates the whole wheel, sasadiripitia.
That's the radical message. Stop blaming the world. Stop fighting the external circumstances. The world is just reflecting the turmoil you allow inside.
And the person who truly wakes up to this, prabudha, they fear nothing. Na dibeti bute.
They fear no created being because they realize there's no fundamental other out there to be afraid of. The fear itself comes from the illusion of separation.
Okay, so having systematically dismantled every possible external excuse for suffering, where does the Brahman point us? What's the actual solution?
It all comes down to one thing: manonigraha.
Mind control.
Mind control. He argues that all the traditional spiritual practices, charity, dhanam, duty, svadharma, disciplines, yamai, yame, study, zutta, good deeds, vows, sadvatani, all of them have one ultimate purpose.
Which is?
They are manonigrala kantos. They all culminate in, they all aim at the control of the mind.
So all the external rituals, the good deeds, the scriptural study, they're just support systems for the main event, which is inner work.
That's the implication. They're supporting players. The star of the show is the state of your mind. And the absolute peak of this effort, the supreme yoga, is manasa samadhi.
Complete absorption of the mind in peace.
Total peace and stillness. He asks, kind of rhetorically, if your mind is peaceful and steady, samayita prashanta, what do you even need external rituals for? And conversely, if your mind is totally out of control, asaidam, what good are those external acts? They can't save you from the enemy within.
That really puts mind control at the absolute pinnacle, above everything else. The ultimate sacrifice isn't giving up wealth, it's giving up mental agitation. But the mind is famously difficult to control. It's like a hyperactive monkey, right?
The Brahman fully acknowledges that. He calls the mind dujaya shatram,
A difficult-to-conquer enemy.
a mighty, turbulent, unconquerable enemy. And asaya vegam, its force, its momentum, is irresistible.
So conquering it is a huge deal.
The biggest deal. He saves his highest praise not for the scholar or the ascetic doing extreme penance, but for the internal warrior, the one who actually manages to subdue this terrifyingly powerful mind. That person is Deva Deva.
The Lord of the Gods. Higher than the gods themselves.
That's the claim. Mastering the mind is the ultimate achievement.
And failing to master it, that has direct consequences in our everyday lives, right? It's not just an internal failure.
Absolutely. He says, if you fail to conquer this internal enemy, you're basically a fool, vimacha, and you inevitably get caught up in asad vigram.
False quarrels, pointless conflicts.
Exactly. Pointless conflicts with everyone, friends, people you're neutral towards, enemies, Mayur Tani, Dasina Rupian, all your external fights, the arguments at home, the disagreements at work, the political polarization.
They're just symptoms, projections of the internal chaos.
That's the idea. You're essentially fighting the external shadow of your own uncontrolled mind.
And this loops back to ignorance, Tamasi, doesn't it?
Yes. He says blind-hearted people, in Hadya, mistake the body, which he calls manomatram, merely a creation of the mind, for their true self. They cling to it, saying, mama, I and mine.
This is me, that is someone else.
Right. And by embracing that fundamental error, that brahmara or delusion, they just wander endlessly in drantapartamasi.
The boundless darkness of ignorance. It sounds like the suffering world is a prison we build ourselves, with the mind as the architect and ignorance as the material.
That's a good way to put it. And the Brahmana's own story, from miser to liberated sage, is the proof of concept. He successfully walked the path of paratmaniham, devotion to the Supreme Self, and Khyentse confirms he will cross that ocean of ignorance by focusing on the divine.
And Khyentse himself summarizes the whole teaching for Uddhava.
He does. He gives his divine stamp of approval. He confirms, look, nobody else is really giving you joy or sorrow. It's atma vibhara. It's your own delusion about yourself.
All the categories we use, friend, enemy, neutral, they're just temporary labels.
Projections of worldly existence, born from ignorance, tamasakata. They aren't fundamentally real.
So what's the final practical takeaway, the bottom line? What's the essence of all yoga, according to Kent?
He gives the ultimate shortcut, the essence. Nigahamanodhya.
restrain the mind with intelligence.
Yes. Use your intelligence, your daya, to restrain the mind. And then fix that restrained mind upon me, the divine. Uddhava yoga sakara.
This alone is the summary and essence of all yoga.
That's it. The most powerful path isn't necessarily complex external actions, but that single, intelligent, internal redirection of your mental focus towards a higher reality.
The power here really seems to be in taking back control, delegitimizing all the external blame. Stop fighting the symptoms, the difficult people, the bad luck, the politics.
And recognize the real Durjaya Shatram, the real unconquerable enemy you need to face is your own uncontrolled mind.
And once that mind is guided by intelligence, focused on something higher, the external stuff just loses its power to hurt you.
It loses its grip. And the final promise attached to this Bhikkhava Gita is incredibly encouraging.
What is it?
Ko says that anyone who holds, recites, or even just listens attentively to this song, this Brahmanito Gita, focused on steadfastness and the absolute reality,
Yeah.
they will never again be overcome by the dualities of material existence.
Joy and sorrow, praise and blame, friend and foe, they lose their power.
They lose their ultimate power to disturb your inner peace. You see them for what they are, fleeting waves on the surface of reality.
So here's the final thought for you, the listener. If that false sense of I and mine is truly the engine creating this entire cycle of worldly suffering, the samsara, what's one concrete action, however small, you can take today or this week to lessen the grip of that false sense?
Knowing, as the text says, that the awakened soul fears no created being. How can you start to intelligently retrain your own mind moment by moment?
That, perhaps, is the real test of understanding this profound wisdom.